I have fallen down on the job half hour into the show, and I forgot how much apparently Moscow Mitch gives Mitch McConnell a sad. So do not tweet it. Don't say it. Moscow Mitch. That came from Joe Scarborough. See, Republicans or former Republicans are better at fighting this game than we are.
Yeah.
They're mean.
Because they're mean. Exactly.
Yes. Gave Mitch McConnell a sad.
Aw, he has
Moscow Mitch. Did I say Mitch McConnell? I meant Moscow Mitch. Look who else is playing the game. Laurence Tribe confirming Ratcliffe will betray the Senate's duty to protect our nation's security. Hashtag Moscow Mitch is just the guy to do it. I love when an esteemed Harvard professor can also play in the games. He joins us now. Good morning, Professor Tribe.
Good morning, Stephanie.
First of all, I could never get into Harvard Law School, so I don't need to suck up to you to get a better grade. But I just want to say, because I know everybody gets a little, stumbly around you, because you mean so much to this country right now. I just have to tell you, you are such a bright light. I'm telling you, people everywhere.
Thank you to say that.
But people everywhere are quoting you and looking to you because you really are just a bright light in this darkness in our democracy. And I just got to thank you. I really do.
Well, thank you for saying that. I'm doing what I can, although it's not enough.
Yeah, well, I know some days yesterday's confluence of events, even for us, is pretty bad, right? I mean, you obviously tweeted about Ratcliffe that if he starts to get the intelligence that he wants, that confirms to his, like he has a Justice Department that confirms, whatever Trump's version of justice is, that's just a terrifying time for our Constitution, isn't it?
Well, also for just our national security. I mean, if he has a national spy chief who tells him what he wants to hear and not what is going on,
right?
We're really in danger. We're in danger not only from attacks by Russia, but attacks by North Korea, attacks by Iran, and they may be serious cyber attacks on our entire electrical grid as well as our election systems. They don't have to use a single bullet in order to disable the country and disable our democracy, and we have a president who, because he doesn't want anyone to question his legitimacy, wants to pretend that they haven't been meddling. These foreign powers haven't been meddling in American government and in our sovereignty ever since before 2016. And for the president, any president, to put his ego, not to mention his bank account, above the security of the American people is terrifying. And people, need to be alert to that and need to recognize how it's not just an abstract danger. We talk about democracy and the rule of law, and a lot of people yawn. It's a real danger to our survival as a country.
Yeah, well, and Professor, oh boy, there's so many questions. I think that's why so many people look to you, because it's like a legal morass, isn't it, of trying to understand. I loved your piece in USA Today. As you tweeted, don't be confused by I think we're up to 110 Democrats now calling for impeachment inquiry now. That inquiry has begun as of Friday, July 26th. The Eagle has taken flight, no question about it. And you write, really, you sort of take us through this whole thing. This is up at stephaniemiller.com. But take us through. You said your piece says we're finally on the path to Trump impeachment and saving what our founders gave us. Nancy Pelosi spared moderate Democrats a floor vote on impeachment, but she has unleashed her committee chairs to do exactly what needs to be done. Explain that, because obviously there is some confusion in some quarters.
Right. Well, there's a lot of confusion, especially as the number of Democrats who are calling for an impeachment inquiry keeps growing, and naturally people scratch their heads and say, "Well, wait a minute. I thought that Chairman Nadler said that we are involved in an impeachment inquiry on Friday. What's going on?" Well, the fact is we are engaged in what, as a legal matter, is an impeachment inquiry. That is a formal inquiry by the Judiciary Committee of the U.S. House of Representatives into the question of what high crimes and misdemeanors this president has committed and what should be done about it, including what articles of impeachment should be drafted and put before the full House of Representatives for a vote. That's what an impeachment inquiry is. And people who say, well, but there hasn't been a floor vote specifically saying, go ahead and inquire. Well, that's true. There wasn't such a floor vote in a lot of prior impeachment cases either. There are a lot of different ways an impeachment inquiry can begin. In this case, Speaker Pelosi basically gave a green light to Chairman Nadler saying, go ahead, look into whether we should impeach this guy. And she did it without having to put some of the more conservative members of her caucus on the line, having to vote one way or the other on whether the president should be subject to impeachment.
It's almost like she's smart at this sort of thing.
As
you write, savvy House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, to spare the Democrats in red and purple congressional districts from facing electoral revolt, gave Nadler the go-ahead without first holding the floor vote to conduct hearings into the president's impeachment. And you can be sure Trump's lawyers will argue in court that the absence of that politically costly floor vote means the impeachment inquiry does not have the legal superpowers such an inquiry normally acquires, and are needed to prevail on judicial unsealing of secret grand jury materials. But as you tweeted this morning, Professor, you said let Trump's lawyers pretend no impeachment inquiry is underway until the House votes to impeach. That's an absurd position. Can you explain why?
Well, it's an absurd position because it basically says that unless and until you embarrass enough of your members, you're not going to get the legal power to get the relevant information. It sort of assumes that a court has some business micromanaging the degree of political embarrassment that a Speaker of the House subjects her members to. That's really not the court's business. I mean, you can imagine if Nancy Pelosi put all of her members to the pressure of voting whether or not there should be an impeachment inquiry, then the Trump people would say, oh, no, that's not enough. She basically has to write out all the articles of impeachment before you can get the relevant evidence. But, of course, all of that would put the cart before the horse.
Right.
Until you get the evidence, until we get every last bit of evidence that we can, we may not know enough to have the national consensus form without which an impeachment might not get as far as it should.
Right. And you write here an interesting point, Professor. You say Pelosi's critics, who call her a coward for being subtle about how she's launching this particular inquiry, seem to be more interested in political optics than in the reality of holding this president accountable for his grave offenses against the United States. I think as you tweeted about it, you said Pelosi quietly sort of did this, but that she and Nadler are going, in your opinion, in exactly the correct fashion.
Right, and I have been among her critics. That is, I'm not one of the people who has said all along, let Nancy be Nancy, she knows what she's doing. I've put a lot of pressure, to whatever extent I could, ever since April, arguing that she has not gone far enough because she has put the kibosh on an impeachment inquiry.
Yeah.
As soon as she stopped doing that, I became one of those who is ready to sing her praises, because it seems to me she's done exactly what she needs to do, namely give the process all of the legal power that it needs without at the same time sort of making it hard for those of her members who come from more conservative districts to survive.
Professor, that is why I regularly name drop you when I am talking to Chairman Schiff or Tom Perez, because you are so well respected, but also because you have been, notoriously cautious, about impeachment in the first place. But then, as you write in your USA Today piece, you say, I strongly criticize Pelosi for failing to unleash Nadler and other committee chairs sooner, but let me be among the first to sing her praises now. She and Nadler and Schiff are doing exactly what needs to be done. It's already clear to many that we now know enough about Trump that Trump became president with the criminal help of a foreign adversary, help he welcomed and exploited, and the Constitution's framers would surely have impeached and removed him for his many acts against the nation. But you say the nation remains to be convinced that this is so, and that the risks and difficulties it will entail are worth it, especially with the 2020 election just around the corner. So timing is going to be key here, isn't it? What do you see going forward, Professor?
Well, that really is the problem. I mean, people who basically say, why do you need to hear from Don McGahn? Why do you need to hear from anybody else? We already know enough, are simply assuming that their state of consciousness is widely shared. The fact is, the framers, if we could resurrect them, would say, the guy is ready to be removed from office. He's clearly a criminal president. He obtained power through the help of a foreign adversary.
Well, through fraud. Through fraud on that level, and also in the SDNY case, right? And that's why he's
Exactly. There's plenty, but the fact is, the framers who would remove him tomorrow if they could aren't here. Right. We, the living, are the people who have the responsibility, and for us to move requires that we move with some sense of awareness of whether we're going to stumble rather than get anywhere.
Well, yeah, that's right. And, look at Mitch McConnell yesterday, Professor. I mean, public outcry does work. At least people are starting to look at this and go, wait a minute, we don't have short-term memory loss. We remember that you're the one that prevented Obama from warning the American people. Now they keep trying to blame Obama exclusively for Russian interference. And we can see him. We see Chris Wray testify. We see Mueller testify. We see the Senate Intelligence Committee all say the same thing. We are under attack. And we see Mitch McConnell on the same day block more election protection bills. So I think he's starting to feel the heat. And I think that's an important part of this, don't you think?
Right. Well, I think so. I hope so. But when you use the word we have to remember that we are not sort of a unified a unified group. There are still a lot of people who do have short-term memory loss and who believe the latest, BS that's fed to them by Moscow Mitch and by treacherous Trump.
Yeah.
I love you on so many levels. So, Professor, I think, it's funny. I mean, I joke, but I do obviously quote you, as many people do, because you've been writing and speaking so eloquently about this. But I quoted you to Schiff and to Tom Perez in terms of what bothers me is people are going so many, steps down the way, so many moves forward. When you say, like, you can make the Nixon comparisons or whatever, but I think you and I both know when the American people see this amount of evidence that hopefully will be uncovered and presented, you don't know where the poll numbers are going to be. You don't know where, if Mitch McConnell sees he's going to take the entire party down. I mean, who could have predicted exactly the way it would have played out with Nixon, right? And I've said to Schiff, I'm like, what about Laurence Tribe's off-ramp? You don't even have to send this to the Senate. Do the sense of the House.
Although things are a lot more challenging in many ways than they were in the Nixon era. We have social media in which people can limit their own input and intake to the things they already believe and want to hear. We've got, Fox News. We have all sorts of tunnel vision going on. And so it's not clear, even though what Trump is doing is much worse than anything that Nixon did, that we will be able to successfully prevent him from holding on to power for a much longer time than any of us fear. I mean, that's a real danger. We can't afford to get overconfident simply because Eugene Robinson rightly says that it looks like Trump is feeling the heat. You, I think, rightly say it looks like McConnell may be feeling the heat. Fact is that they may be feeling the heat, but we cannot be overconfident.
Right. They are even more dangerous in that they will apparently now do anything to hang on to power.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to just, because I wanted to ask you just quickly. So the administration is currently using phony claims of privilege. These are the things we're trying to get, right? Full access to the unredacted Mueller report, which I guess we still don't have, the grand jury testimony and documents, the testimony and documents from Don McGahn, who's obviously a central fact witness, the president's tax returns. So is that what all of this is? I mean, in what time frame do you think all that might happen on?
This basically unlocks all of that. The law is very clear that once you are engaged in an impeachment inquiry, all of these other forms of stonewalling fall away, but it doesn't happen instantly. I mean, we are in court, but we can't make the court move any more quickly than it's willing to. Beryl Howell, the district judge before whom the matter is now pending, is someone who has set an expedited briefing schedule. It looks like she will move quickly. When she rules, I hope and think in our favor, there will be an appeal to the U.S. Court of Appeals. That may be expedited, but it's still going to take at least weeks. And so it's not going to happen overnight. But by the time the Congress comes back into session at the end of this 6-week period, it's quite likely that we will have green lights going forward. And I don't think that even a Trump-dominated Supreme Court is going to bail him out of this one.
Wow, that is good to hear. And see, for those of us that have been screaming in the back seat, when are we going to get to impeachment Disneyland? And you should not take a recess. That's what I was saying yesterday, Professor. I wanted to just confirm that with you, that just because they're recessing, the courts are not, and this is still moving forward. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Wow, that is all fantastic information to have. And we appreciate it as always, Professor. I always have like 16 more questions for you, but thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thanks for calling, Stephanie.
All right, thank you. Bye-bye.
Oh, he's so awesome. And he's a Harvard Law professor.
He makes me happy. And he uses nicknames. Moscow Mitch. Moscow Mitch. Moscow Mitch.